Okay. We are pair one. It's Lynn Franks and Amy Purcell, and we had the topic, the nonfiction collection should be arranged by Dewey classification number at the elementary level. We had about 4 or 5 topics on this, and our first topic was why choose the Dewey Decimal Classification System instead of the Bookstore model. Learning the Dewey Decimal Classification System will guide students to the books of their choice. We just felt that this was an easier way for students to find their books and how to use the library. Using the Dewey system has many benefits. Just that locating the items of study are easier, and it's meant to be a field system that involves over time. Which there's a lot of addition to the index terms and things like that. Organizing books by category can seem more easier because it tries to reflect what things in this world, and doesn't have a location in the field of study. For our topic 2, we said that students can be overwhelmed by the amount of books in a library setting, so they kind of don't know where to go to look for a certain genre or series of books. So the Dewey system can just be a guide for them to use these books that they have the interest in. And where the location is, it makes it easier for them. It's a little bit more of an efficient system. Also, I know that this system is used all throughout elementary, middle, and high school, so they're just used to using the system when it comes to finding books organized by genre topic. So I think that's it for our first 2 topics.
So this is Lynn, and as Amy said, it is a more logical, organized system. Sometimes people think that bookstore model is easier to find things, but what might be logical to some people when they're looking in a bookstore setting might be illogical to another. Finding something in travel, for instance, if you're going to Costa Rica, might be something you'd look for in a bookstore model, but you may not be able to find the exact location you wanted, where if you look in a Dewey Decimal System, it's easier to find because it's exactly pinpointed into what nonfiction section it is. The Dewey Decimal is a classic system. It's worked for many years, and although some people seem to be confused by it, really the digits are just formed 1 digit at a time. If you start from the left, the first digit represents the most general classes, and then each of those 10 classes, the 100s through the 900s, are divided into 10 more specific subjects called the hundreds divisions. The third number is really the thousand sections. The more numbers after the decimal, then the more specific the topic gets. And if you think about it, what Melville Dewey did back in the 1800s was he came up with 10 big questions, and that's where this system is organized and how it's organized. For instance, the 0s to the 100s, the question is what things do I need to know? It's just general knowledge section. And for instance, how do we communicate with others is the 400 section. So if you think about that question, it's really the languages that you're looking at. For instance, in the 900s is geography and history, and the big question is, what can I learn about places and the past? I don't think that the Dewey Decimal System is so confusing as it is. We just have so many libraries that are so poorly organized or poorly labeled. I think it's the labeling that really needs to improve, not so much the system.
4 minutes.
If you think about it, Melville Dewey actually began organizing it just under those 10 questions. And in the library that I'm setting up right now, I took those 10 questions, and under the labeling of 100s, I put how do people think, in parentheses, philosophy. 200s, what do I know about cultures, beliefs, and traditions? That would be your religions, and so on. So if you think about it as really what questions do those 10 sections answer, I think the Dewey Decimal seems a lot more logical than it is. I think most of the problem is the labeling and the fact that people are not taught how to use it and what it's really all about. So we really do believe that the books in the elementary school level should be classified by the Dewey Decimal System.
Time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, this is Bonnie Goodheart, and Suzanne Hardison and I are pair two. So we are taking the position that the nonfiction collection in an elementary school library should actually be arranged by genre and topic, more along the lines of a bookstore model versus the Dewey Decimal System. So we have some three major key points related to supporting of our topic. The very first one is based on students' developmental stages in the elementary school. So Dewey's structure actually requires learners to have a much higher understanding when it comes to higher levels of organization and classification. And some elementary school library media specialists, such as Carol Coulthaw, has done some research to show that younger elementary age students are not at a developmental stage to be able to understand those higher levels of organization and classification that Dewey has built inherent to his classification system. She actually suggested that students at the upper elementary grades, 5th grade and above, would actually be at the very beginning stages to understand the levels of organization and classification, leaving much of the elementary school students at 4th grade and below just simply not developmentally ready to understand how to use the Dewey Decimal System effectively and successfully. Their thinking, if you look at Piaget's studies, show that those students in the younger elementary grade levels, their thinking is much more concrete, therefore leading to confusion when they try to use Dewey's classification system at those higher levels of organization that they just have not attained yet.
Librarians at the elementary level are really doing their jobs. Each year they diligently teach Dewey, and their shelves are neatly organized according to the Dewey system, yet they are bombarded by questions from younger students who want to know where to find their favorite book about a dinosaur or about Derek Jeter. Also, something to think about is some younger students who would not normally go into the nonfiction section may be simply avoiding it because they don't think they're going to be able to locate their book that they're in search of. And when you think about it, even some of the more advanced students at the elementary level have difficulty moving from finding a title that they want in the OPAC system and then navigating to the correct position it's shelved on.
Our second point in defense of the bookstore model is actual ease of use. There are many benefits to actually going in the bookstore model, which relies more on genres of literature. And that leads to making using and the finding of resources, both fiction and nonfiction, more student-centered. It would allow for easier browsing by students at all levels. It would allow for closer arrangement of all fiction and nonfiction titles that are related to the same topics, avoiding the disconnect that often happens between looking through a fiction section and then trying to find something in a nonfiction section. It also addresses changes that are made constantly to the curriculum with the new standards that come out, and it does actually support the Common Core standards, which require students to be exposed to and read all kinds of titles, including both fiction and nonfiction. The genre bookstore model would house them together. So moving towards an ease of use system actually allows for easier browsing.
Media specialists have to remember that along with teaching children how to find resources, we're helping them cultivate a lifelong love of learning. If Dewey makes finding the specific books, if it's so overwhelming, they'll miss the chance to actually read the books. More importantly, libraries that have said goodbye to Dewey and have become genrefied state that they get rave reviews from students, teachers, and parents. The benefits have been greater student independence, more book choices from multiple sections, increased circulation numbers, and quite simply, just time for the library parapro and media specialists to talk to students about what they might like to read next.
And our last topic is the development of the 21st century library. Dewey's system was developed back in 1876 as a way to organize the nonfiction topics of his day. It has been updated several times, but that has led to the inherent extension of the numbers past the decimal point. It does not include or was designed for topics that weren't present during his time period. So you're going to find a wide range of topics within one of those domains of Dewey's system that don't necessarily make sense to students because it fits into one of those small questions that Dewey developed. And it doesn't really build on new and ever evolving topics and inventions that have come about since 1876.
Okay, it's time. So that is our discussion on the Dewey Decimal System versus the Bookstore model in the nonfiction section of an elementary school.